Welcome to this afternoon's Wheelhouse Talk with Dianne Griffin. The Howensen Center's Cook Leadership Academy is excited to bring this talk to campus. My name is Ben Parcell, a first-year Cook Leadership Academy Fellow, and it is my pleasure to introduce our program and speaker. Now finishing up my fourth and final year at Grand Valley in our Information Systems program, I can personally say that the opportunities for students such as myself here at Grand Valley are both abundant and beyond extraordinary. I've had the opportunity to lead student organizations across campus, collaborate with others, and take the role as a continuous learner with special help from our wonderful on-campus resources, such as the Howensen Center and community members such as today's speaker. As you might already know, the Howensen Center's Wheelhouse Talks highlight the philosophies and experiences of leaders from a variety of disciplines, communities, and cultures. These individuals take center stage to share their experiences and perspectives with us. Their leadership lessons help us to chart our own paths forward and provide a blueprint towards reaching our own goals. The Wheelhouse Talks are a space for reflection, innovative learning, and an exploration of the journeys of today's leaders. They are a celebration of human endeavors, a call to arms for anyone seeking to create positive change, and a motivator for the potential within us all. Now to introduce our speaker. In 2007, Dianne Griffin founded the Griffin Properties Mega Team in Grand Rapids, Michigan, though it wasn't quite a mega team at the start. In fact, it was a team of one. Through Dianne's hard work and perseverance, Griffin Properties has more than tripled in size since its inception. It is now recognized as the #1 residential retail team in Grand Rapids and was named the 174th sales team in the nation by the Wall Street Journal's Real Trends report. In 2014, Dianne acquired majority ownership of Keller Williams Grand Rapids North, where she is now the operating principal. More recently, she expanded her leadership internationally as president of global relations of Daisy Worldwide, initially accepting the positions of operating principal of Leeds Central in the United Kingdom and the regional director of training and education at Keller Williams Belize. Dianne is currently the regional operating principal of Keller Williams United Kingdom and an investor in the master franchise for Keller Williams Poland. As a MAPS coach, Dianne's passion is to help others achieve their goals in business and in everyday life. Coaching has allowed her to support individuals who are committed to growing their businesses through high-level accountability and personalized guidance. In addition to her responsibilities as a business owner, educator, and a mother of two, Dianne is a tireless advocate and volunteer in Grand Rapids, the community to which she attributes her livelihood. Through her work as a chairperson of the Fulton Street Farmers Market Capital Campaign, she was instrumental in raising more than $3 million towards expanding the now bustling marketplace. Along with the continued support of the Fulton Street Farmers Market, Dianne serves on the boards of both the Progressive Women's Alliance and the Uptown Corridor Improvement Development, and is an active member of the East Fulton Business Association. Her team regularly supports the Red Cross and has taken part in fundraising efforts for the Gilda's Club of Grand Rapids. In her spare time, Dianne is a consummate athlete, playing on 2 separate soccer teams and taking part in as many triathlons as she can schedule throughout the state. Please join me in welcoming Dianne Griffin to the stage.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm quite honored. I'll start with that. So I want to go through a few different things with you today. I know we got a little bit of a late start, so I'm going to keep an eye on the time. I know sometimes the format is such that the speaker goes and then questions happen. I know some of you that are students do need to leave for a 6 o'clock class. So I'd like to invite you to ask any questions you have throughout the presentation. Raise your hand, speak up, jump up and down, whatever you like to do. I like to have very interactive types of communication. So what I'm going to do right now is tell you a little bit about me, where I'm from, what my sort of upbringing and history looks like. I also am then going to go into leadership, characteristics of effective leaders, successes and failures, and then just some tips, some things I've learned along the way that mostly from other people that I'll then share with you. And you can see which ones might resonate, which ones you have questions about, and we'll go from there. Sound good? Yes? I appreciate you guys that you moved up. I like to have it feel a little more intimate. So, all right, so I grew up actually in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I lived there all of my upbringing until I went away to the University of Evansville in Indiana. Some of you may have heard of the Purple Aces. Not many, but some. So when I was growing up, it was on a farm. And for those of you who've grown up on a farm, it was a lot of hard work. We had a lot of physical labor, a lot of responsibilities, and a lot of animals. And with animals, unlike most hobbies or sports, you can't ignore them, right? They need your tending to at least twice a day. And when you have lots and lots of animals, that takes a lot of discipline to get up early, be sure that you're tending to their needs. And I think that that sort of farm life growing up helped so much with managing time and meeting deadlines and being truly accountable to these animals that were yours. So I feel like that gave me a really solid base. My family is a hardworking family, and like many, right? My father was an employee at his father's business, which was his grandfather's business. And part of being the early, it's a title company for helping people buy and sell houses. And the thing about the title company was that the office needed to be cleaned. And there wasn't an affordability to have a cleaning company. So every night, my mom and my dad and my brother and I, from the time I was 10, went to downtown Cincinnati and cleaned the office. And it was really exciting because at first it was like, okay, I'm only big enough or tall enough to dust. And then finally, like, I could vacuum, and that was exciting. And then I eventually was able to empty the trash when I was strong enough for that. And so there were lots of experiences. Finally, I was able to work for him in the summers, back when they had card catalogs, right? I'm dating myself. And so everything was hand done, and then I was able to be the delivery person for packages and money and all things around downtown. So I learned how to make it all around the big city on foot, which was a great way to learn how to navigate a city. So we did that. In addition, I played many sports. So I mentioned we had a lot of animals. So I rode horses, rode hunter jumper, 3-day eventing, and also fox hunting. And I think the fox hunting piece is particularly important because the lesson there was all about respect. It was about respect for people who were already leaders, people who had established themselves in the community, people who others looked up to. So to be a part of that and watch how every single person had such amazing respect and gratitude for the people that were the senior members of the hunt. It was very humbling, right? As the young huntsman, huntswoman, we had to get there first and help them tack their horses and do everything for them so they could get on the horse and look great and take off. And then we ride the very back unless they needed something, and then they sort of summon you, and then the young people would come up and get you and help. Oftentimes I used to give my horse up because my horse was such a great horse, and they had wild horses because they were, it was like not really riders, it was more of a social thing. So I would often trade my horse out for somebody else so that they could have a more enjoyable fox hunt. So in addition to riding horses, I played soccer, was on the swim team, on the tennis team, and I eventually had to decide which of those things, track and cross country as well. So I had to sort of decide what things to give up and focus on what I really was great at, and that was the horseback riding piece. It's actually, I would come home from college and help train people's horses, and that would help me pay for my university. So it turned out to be very important for me to be extremely good at that so that I could actually reach my end goal. So that's the childhood piece. Then I went to the University of Evansville, as I said, and I thought I wanted to go in for physical therapy. Somebody came to our high school and said, hey, physical therapy, I thought that sounds cool. What I didn't understand is you need to be really good at math and really good at science, which weren't my two strengths. So after 1 year in physical therapy and a lot of lack of discipline, I think I was down to like a 1.3 GPA. I got a really stern talking to from my father and had to repeat many, many classes. I did end up with a 3.85 and still finished in 4 years, so that worked out okay. But the thing that again taught me was to that discipline. Like, you absolutely can do this if you're focused. And we'll talk a lot about that part as we go on, but I was really, really excited to be able to go through. What I did do is figured out what I liked most. It wasn't physical therapy, it was communications. So I have degrees in public relations and interpersonal communication skills training. And my first job out of university was in Grand Rapids, so that's how I got here. That job was with Nancy Skinner and Associates. Some of you may remember Nancy, quite a leader in this community and a very wonderful mentor for me. I started out as an assistant for her and ended up as her top salesperson, selling communication skills training programs all around the country for big companies. And I learned a lot about, so sort of these life lessons about how you deal with the huntsman and the rules, the unspoken rules, the caveat, all these things, and being able to show up in any environment and be okay. That was all come rushing back, and it was amazing. As if, I was 21, 22, and so my clients were Hewlett-Packard and Coca-Cola and McDonald's, and I'm going to meet with people who are important and experienced, and here I was quite young, but I was able to tap into these things and make sure I could connect with them and really do what they listened to what they needed and was able to create programs that helped them. So I did that for 5 years, and honestly, it was very corporate. I had never really been in a corporate world, and I decided that I didn't want to do that, so I took a year off and traveled. So I traveled all around Europe, and one of the things that I really enjoyed in that travel was the sort of coffee shop, cafes, just all around Europe. They were quaint and dark and fun, and so I came back to Grand Rapids, and I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open cafes. So my very first cafe was at Grand Valley in Allendale, the Afterwards Cafe, and some of you I see here have been there and were supporters of the cafe over the years. So after 10 years, I opened 6 different locations of the Afterwards Cafe, all around education. So there were a couple at Grand Valley, 3 at Community College, 1 at the Wyoming Public Library, 1 at the Grand Rapids Public Library, the new one as they were building. So the cafe experience was fantastic. I loved it in many, many ways, but I, at that time, also had my first child, and I'm not sure how many of you have college students as employees, but not all, but many aren't as tied to a job at a coffee shop as they would be a career job. So being open from 6 in the morning until 2 in the morning, if something wasn't going right or somebody didn't show up or something happened, that was me and with an infant. So I was like, okay, it's time to go on and do something new. So I sold all the cafes to 3 different owners, and I moved on to work in the art world. So I worked for the LaFontaine Gallery for 6 years, selling high-end residential and corporate art all around Grand Rapids and some other cities as well. I became quite an art enthusiast. I have an obnoxious collection, I say. I always joke it's the addiction that everybody can enjoy, because it's everywhere. It's in all of my offices, it's in my house, it's everywhere. But I really, really do love the art piece. During that time, I had my second daughter and felt like having something with more flexibility would be a good idea as opposed to more retail kind of hours. So at that time is really where my real estate journey started. My mother is an agent in Florida. I didn't grow up with it, but she got into it when I went away to college. So how many of you do everything your mother says? Right. I'm no exception. She told me for years I should be in real estate, and I kept like, all right, and forget it. And then finally I thought, I'll do it. That's fine. I'll just be quiet. I'll try it. And I was, at that time, a single mother with an infant and a little one, and I decided to embark on real estate. I had 3 months to make it work, and I did. I made that work. Turns out flexible hours is sort of a myth. In real estate, it's more like 24/7, but nobody told me that ahead of time. So I ended up with the Griffin as an individual agent through Keller Williams, helping people buy and sell houses. And in short order, I decided to grow a team, and it's something that Keller Williams, as a real estate company, that's what they teach you. There's a book, it's called The Red Book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent Book, and it shows you exactly how to build a team. The idea of this is that you're building leverage, right? You're creating opportunity for other people in their world to have what they want, and you're creating opportunity for you to go on and learn more things and open more doors. So over the years, our Griffin Properties team is now 18 of us. Is that right, Jordan? 18. So we have a lot of people that help others buy and sell houses. I still do some of that, but less, as I had other opportunities presented to me. So throughout all of this time, Ben mentioned earlier, a lot of volunteer, a lot of boards, a lot of community involvement. I'm very passionate about that. And what that also does is give you a lot of connections, right? You meet a lot of amazing people and with different skill sets. And so one of the things that I learned is that I really enjoyed the coaching and the training and the speaking part of business. And so Keller Williams also has a program, as Ben mentioned, MAPS, which is a coaching. So I became a coach, and I have a whole variety of clients all around the world, and I enjoy that piece immensely. I also became Keller Williams University master faculty, so I'm certified to teach a whole variety of classes all around the world, and I get to meet lots of people, and that's fun too. And then following that, I was presented with the opportunity, again, through all these different channels and kind of getting to know a lot of people, that I could purchase a market center that was struggling. So a market center is like a sub-license, a sub-franchise, so to say. So if you own all of McDonald's and you want to do a McDonald's location, you can be awarded a sub-license franchise for McDonald's, and that's yours, right? So I bought a sub-license of Keller Williams that was struggling, turned that around, and that was 6 years ago now, and it's going really well, so we're excited about that. Then another opportunity came to me, and this one was fascinating, and one of the reasons, so I do a lot of triathlons, you mentioned. I do 8 or 9 triathlons a year. This year I'm doing a half Ironman and a full Ironman, so this is a big athletic year for me. But so when I travel, I need to stay at a place where there's a pool so I can get that in. And I'm swimming, and there's this guy swimming, and we start talking, and he's like, oh, I want to open a market center sub-license in Leeds, England. And I was like, well, here's my skill set, and here's who I know, and I was like, maybe we should do it together. And he's like, let's do it. So I met him at that event, and we started the Leeds Market Center 4 years ago. And we've been building that, and that's been very exciting. So that was my first sort of international business experience. Then again, through these networking and talking to people, that word spread. And when Keller Williams was getting ready to open the master franchise for all of Belize, they approached me and said, we'd like for you to be an investor. And I was like, that would be great. So I did that. And then the same thing happened with Poland. So they came to me and said, would you invest in Poland? And I said, yes. So we did that. And after a couple of years of that, it's been 2.5 years now, Keller Williams Worldwide came to me and said, we want you to buy the master franchise for all of the United Kingdom. And so Gary Keller, who's the mentor, he's the co-founder of Keller Williams. One of the things he always tells us is say yes and then figure it out. So I said yes. And then it turns out it's really expensive to buy a country. I don't know why I wouldn't have thought that, but it was. So I found some investor partners, and they went in with me on it. And it started a real journey for me. That journey, trying to run a business in a country, even though they speak English, it's different. Their language is very different, and the way business is done is extremely different. So that journey has been a real eye-opener and has been extraordinary. One of the things that was extraordinary is I traveled there 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off for more than 2 years. So it created a lot of pressure on my businesses in Michigan, created a lot of pressure on my family and finances and everything else, but I could see the opportunity. I knew in the long run it was an amazing opportunity, and I felt like that was worth it. and to show up as a leader in another country with knowledge that they did need, felt like I was giving as I like to do. So that has all been happening. As of the end of January, I'm back in Grand Rapids, pretty much full time. I just need to go to the UK once a quarter. I have a great team in place there now, and they're building and growing, and so that's sort of my journey. I'm 51 and a half. I've got all kinds of time left, so lots of things to get done. So that's really what I've accomplished in those first years. And I want to get into the leadership lessons and the successes and failures, as well as the tips next. But I want to be sure, if you have any questions or clarification on what we have talked about for now, I'm happy to do that. That's a good question. The question is, throughout the career, what am I most proud of? I'd say I'm most proud of the opportunities that I've been able to create for other people. That people in my world really, they want to grow. I attracted two leaders. I attract leaders, and when you're attracting a leader, they're going to nip at your heels to be sure you're creating enough opportunity for them within the world, right? So that's been one of the biggest rewards for me. Yeah, it's a great question. All right, so I do have a few notes, but I want to just, because I want to be sure I hit everything. All right, so one of the first things we want to talk about is valuable leadership characteristics. And so when you think about valuable leadership characteristics, I think, to me, immediately, it was honesty, integrity, transparency, and sort of buzzwords, right? Being trustworthy, looking for a win-win. Those are all true. We need all of those. But I thought I'd go into some other characteristics that I feel have been really valuable. And one is, I think excellent leaders listen more than they talk. Because if you're going to be a great leader, you need to be encouraging people, right? You need to be setting the stage, but unless you know what they want, you're not going to be able to lead them in the direction that they want to go. So I just feel like really being sure that you understand that listening most, which is ironic since I'm here talking and you're sitting there, but the listening piece is absolutely imperative. The other thing that comes with listening, but I've found it's taken a lot of years. I'm getting better at it, but I want to be very, very good at it. And that is just to be sure that instead of telling people what they should do or ideas of how they could be better, to help them self-discover what that is, right? So just like my mom says, you should be real estate, and I said, forget it. If she could have helped me, if she would have asked me questions that helped me understand that this was a path that could be full with lots of opportunities and great reward, I may have been more interested in it. So I think as leaders, we really need to be sure we're helping people self-discover through asking great questions and being a really, really good listener. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's quite a journey, because when you're working to help somebody self-discover, sometimes it's helping them self-discover out of a situation that they're proud of. They may not be great at it, but they're proud of it. And you need to help move them from here to here without being angry, without telling them, you're out of here, you got to go over there. But they feel like, oh, actually, it's kind of nice over there. I think that does sound good. Then it's their idea. And when it's their idea, they're far more happy. And they're far more likely to succeed with it. The other thing I think is a great characteristic for a leader is to repeat the vision often. So a lot of times we say, like, oh, well, I told them, that's what we're doing, here we go. But when was the last time you said it? And are you saying it in a way that's succinct, so that people can understand it and that they can recite it, right? So right now, if you ask anybody in the United Kingdom, what is our vision, it's for our agents to be the realtors of choice in the UK. It's simple, right? It's not a paragraph, it's not a story, it's not hard to remember, but that is the vision. And you ask anybody what that is. But why do they know it? Because we say it over and over and over. So I think repeating the vision helps people integrate it into their being, and then it helps them live it in that way. The other thing is to lead by example, right? When there are different kinds of leaders, some are more dictators, go do this, this, and this, but when you're the type of leader that gets out and does it, and stands up and represents in the way that you're asking others to, they're far more likely to follow you, right? Because the whole thing about being a leader is that you want to be somebody that somebody is going to follow, not that you're pushing people into it. And something that I don't think many of us talk about, but I think is really important, is leaders have to make some really tough decisions, some really unpopular decisions, some really gut-wrenching, hard conversations. I mean, it's not all glamorous, but you have to be strong enough within you to be able to have those tough conversations, because that's what everybody else in your world is depending on you for, right? You have to be able to make those. So it's not all glamorous. There are plenty of conversations that are not, but it's the reality of it. Right, so those are some of the characteristics I think are valuable. Are there any that I missed that you'd like to add? Well, I'd say one of the really tough conversations I had was with the Leeds Market Center. My business partner, we started it together. He ultimately wasn't showing up. He wasn't doing his part to grow the business in the way we had agreed. And it was really hard because it was his idea. And I said, hey, I can help you with that. And then here I am saying, actually, it's not working. And I feel like the only solution is for you to be in, and part of it was a self-discovery conversation. When have you been the most happy? Oh, when I'm selling. Well, what if you were selling now instead of doing the management of it? Oh, that would be great, but I can't do that. But what if you could? What if we could eliminate this and you could do what really makes you happy? Well, could that happen? I was like, yeah, we could do that, right? Now, these took many conversations, but it was a tough decision because I felt honored that he had brought me in to be the business partner. Now I'm essentially escorting him out in a way to still maintain a relationship. And he's still a salesperson in the Leeds Market Center. He's one of our top agents, so he's happier than ever. But it was a tough conversation. And so how do you balance these things? Because Gary does write the book with Jay Papasan, The One Thing. It's an excellent book if you haven't read it. It's not about real estate, doesn't talk about real estate at all. It talks about focusing, and that's actually on the list of things, so I'll just talk about it now since we're about to transition. So the thing about having one main focus is that is true, and you need to do that until you have a really solid foundation. Right? You've got the people in place, you have the finances in place, until it's self-sufficient, mostly, for you to then go have a new opportunity. Right? So it's a balance. When I had the opportunity to buy the UK, prior to that, I was looking for more opportunity. I had this business running this business. My goal has been to have 20 ultimately passive income streams. I'm at 16 now. So of the 16, 4 aren't completely passive. I have to still work in 4 of those businesses. So it's a lot. It soon won't be 4, right? But sometimes you have to step back in and make some things happen. But I think the real goal to be able to focus on that one thing is to have that really solid foundation. And it's always about people. Who are you in people? Who are you in business with? What are those people's strengths? And then along those lines, so moving from there into the successes and failures, Jordan, who's on the team, does the Failure Lab. I don't know how many of you have been to a Failure Lab, but it's an incredible opportunity, and I was able to do one. And you stand there and you talk about your failure, and you can't come up with a solution or how you corrected it, right? It's an active failure. And so I could talk for a long time about that. I'm going to bring up a few, but I also want to talk about successes. And obviously, the opposite of them can fall into the other category. But one of them is to go small to get big, right? Successful entrepreneurs go small to get big. And what does that look like, right? And so for me, starting in real estate, going small to get big was, I picked a 3-mile radius, and I only help people buy and sell houses in a 3-mile radius. I went really small. It was my neighborhood. I knew the nuances. I could be an expert quickly, and that was great. We see it in the law professions, right? We see it in education. You don't have the same professor for, engineering as you do for computer science or for Spanish, or, right? You pick something and you get really, really, really good at it, and that helps create that foundation. So the go small to get big, the same thing. I just went to the foot doctor last week, and I asked him a question about my wrist, and he's like, we don't do wrists. I'm like, oh, well, it's part of the body, right? But they go small on feet, and that's what they do. So I think when you look at people's success, they have gone small to get big, and creating that foundation. And then on the failure side, I think for me the biggest failure in building businesses is not keeping the rest of your life in balance, right? And this is a struggle for everybody and every business. And what happens is we make things really complicated, maybe more complicated than they need to be, and we sort of hide behind that complication. So for instance, I think having time with your family, having time with your health, right, your exercise, your body, are absolutely imperative. But when people are in business or get stressed at work, very often the first thing to go is time with the family. They're not home for dinner, or you get home late. They'll understand, I'll catch up with them next year, or whatever that looks like. Or they let their health go. I don't have time to work out in the morning. That's crazy. It's too early. I stayed up too late. I've got all this work to do. And so we create this complication, and we hide behind it. And it's easy to do. We've been practicing at hiding behind complication for most of our lives. And it is, I think, the greatest way we fail, that we don't figure out a way to keep our life in balance. And the one thing they call it counterbalance. There's no such thing as total balance, right? As soon as this, I get this, that means this goes. You have to really do a little bit of all of that, but always remembering what's most important. And I think that is, when I did my failure lab, that was one of the things. Is one of my mentors said, "How do you spell love?" And he said Time. It's like, oh, right. A lot of us give up time with the people we love, thinking love is enough, but time is really related to love. So I feel like the successes that can come from these experiences have to do with finding that counterbalance, putting family first, and putting your health right there with it. You only have this, right? When the body's gone, it doesn't matter if your mind is rushing. I'd be really frustrated, so I think that doesn't work for me. One of the things I do see with failures, and this is, again, personal failure, is when something doesn't seem quite right. It's like there are indicators, like, oh, you get like a little something in your gut, or you're not sure, but then you think, oh, well, like even with my colleague that I was saying that I had to help him self-discover out of the role he was in. When that happened, I knew long before I took action that it needed to happen. There were signs. I knew it, I could feel it, I could see it. And I think when you do have a genuine care for other people, it's easy for us to make it really complicated. Well, what happens if I get him out of that position? Then he loses an income, and he has 2 kids, and I make up this whole story about why this is going to be a hard conversation. I make that all complicated, but what I'm really doing is I'm slowing down the decision process. So when we make really slow decisions, it can be crippling. It weighs on us emotionally, it weighs on us physically, and it just prolongs the agony. Ultimately, we ended up where we would have ended up had I addressed it 2 months, 3 months, 4 months before. So it's been one of the things I've been working on for a long time, is to make quicker decisions when I know it's the right thing. And the interesting thing is, every single time this has happened, ultimately, the decision that needed to be made that affected somebody's life turned out to be far better. I made up the story that this was going to be bad for them, that it was going to be hard for them, that I'm the bad person. And maybe for a while they thought that. But if you see them later, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that happened. Do you know what? This opened up, everything is better than it's ever been. And so I just want to caution people to be careful not to run your story as their story, to really get out from behind that and be willing to take quick action to be sure that they can achieve what they need to achieve as well. So like I said, I could go on and on about successes and failures, but I think those are the key ones in my book, that we need to go small to get big, focus on the one thing, build a solid ground, stop hiding behind complications and making up stories, take action quickly, and put your family and your health first. Yes? It's almost like I've set them up in the audience to ask the question right at the right time, but I didn't. I didn't know that was going to be your question. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is advice and wisdom for future leaders. And the very first thing on my list is take risks. It is. And I don't feel like opportunity just gets handed to people. I believe it comes to us, but unless you're open to it, you don't know to take it. And it's scary. I've taken some really, really big risks. One of the things I do to evaluate the risk is who I'm in business with. Almost all opportunities involve other people. So that is on my list as well. People, people, people. Who you hang around matters. And you need to hang around people who have done amazing things and are willing to teach you, but also around people who want to learn and have a great future. I think it's our responsibility as people to spend time with each so that we are not just like, okay, what can you do for me? Come on, give me something else. No, you need to be willing to give as well. And that mentality attracts people. So evaluating the risk, first and foremost for me, it's people. Then it's looking at the money of it and looking to see how long-term that is. One of the things that just happened to me recently, which I think was really great, is we had an opportunity for somebody to come in and invest in the UK. And he was honored and delighted by the opportunity, but he said, you know what I decided? He's like, I want to retire within 1 year. And my goal is in that year to pay off my last commercial building, and that's $5 million. So I have decided I'm not going to make any decisions that require any risk that could get in the way of me hitting my $5 million within the year. Now that's clarity, right? So part of how we need to evaluate risk is know what our long-term goal is. He knows what that goal is, right? And we know with the UK that he's not going to get $5 million in a year, right? Maybe in 6 years, but not in 1 year. So it didn't fit with his formula. So understanding what your formula is and being sure you make the decisions within those guidelines, I think is another thing. The other is to know your why. We talk about this a lot in Keller Williams. So just, what motivates you? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you want to do what you want to do? And to have real clarity around that, and also not be too hard on yourself, because your why today is not going to be your why in a year or in 5 years. So you need to give yourself some grace and be able to keep adjusting your why, right? When I first got into real estate, my why was to feed my kids. Like, that was it. I needed to make enough money to feed my kids, period. Nothing else mattered, right? And now my why has evolved again. It's been for a long time to create enough opportunity in the world so everybody in my world can have whatever they want. But what Kendall helped me figure this out. What it lacked is anything about what was good for me and my family. It was all about everybody else. And it's okay for your why to be a little bit selfish, right? So we modified it through, to add to the beginning of it, to put family first and then help other people get what they want, right? So it's important to know your why, to be able to modify it. I think some other ones are to be patient. A lot of times you take a risk and you want today to see the difference, and it isn't. Things, you need to double the time you think it's going to take and double the cost that you think it's going to take and equate that in with the risk of it. To stay curious. I didn't ever think I'd own a business in the United Kingdom or Poland or Belize, but I was curious. And I listened and I evaluated it. And I think that staying curious makes you hear things that you wouldn't have heard otherwise. And then being sure as a leader that you're always focusing on what the value is for other people, right? I need to know what my value is, but what is the value I bring for others? And that's going to be different. It's going to be different with your businesses. It's going to be different with your ages. And then we spend quite a bit of time talking about gratitude. And I would just encourage every leader as part of who you are to think about what you're grateful for and tell the people who you are grateful for that. It really goes a long way. It doesn't have to be every day, but it needs to be on a regular basis. And it ties into something I said earlier, but you can't just say your vision once. It's like telling your partner, I love you, and then never saying it again. You're like, well, I told you that like 10 years ago. Don't you remember, right? Yeah, but I'd like to hear it more often. And so the same thing with gratitude. When you call somebody and have just, hey, I'm just calling to tell you you're amazing and I'm grateful that you're in my life. And when that happens, it moves people. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to say a bunch of things. You don't need to script it out. Just call them and tell them how you feel in your heart. And when you're that kind of leader, you attract other people. And so having a clear goal, one of the things that Gary Keller does tell us is if people aren't laughing at your goal, it's not big enough, right? So when I said, oh yeah, I'm going to buy the master franchise for the United Kingdom, you think I got some laughs? Yeah, really? Good luck with that, right? But to have a big goal is not bad. It actually drives you. Most of us, if we say, oh, I want to run a 11-minute mile, and you keep running 12 and you keep running 12, eventually you will run 11, but if the goal was 12, you're probably not going to run 11, right? So for me, to have a goal that's a little further than what seems reasonable helps me get there. So we did talk about characteristics, we talked about failures and successes, and we talked about some tips for future leaders. We have a few more minutes, like 5 more minutes for some questions, and then I'll be here so we can keep talking. But something that is along the lines that I think is really important is around the risk question, and that when anything is happening, leaders, they go first, right? Everybody else is behind you, or they're following you. And now other people might be following them, so they may be leaders as well. But leaders do need to take risks, and they need to go out. One of my favorite things, I spent a lot of time on planes back and forth, and I fly Delta, and for a while on their little screen, this is my favorite, on their little screen it says, there's an old saying that good things come to those who wait. It's that old. It's like good things come to those who go, right? They go for it, they go after it, they get it. And I just love that. I was like, it's true, it's just that, it's old. That's an old saying. So I encourage you all to go out and be that leader and go get it, and good things come to those who go. All right, thank you. There are 4 different categories of real estate. There's the category of it was all about the agent. That was pre-technology when we had big books that had houses in it. And then there's this opposite swing where people think it will all be technology, only no people, just technology. There is the theory that we're going to have the tech-enabled agent, and then there's a theory of the agent-enabled tech. So we're big believers of the tech-enabled agent. I firmly believe that people buy from people, that relationships matter. Real estate specifically, it's one of the biggest investments in your life. And with that, I'd like to have a person involved. Now, can I look online and check out websites? And yeah, but when it comes down to it, and I want to spend $100,000, $1 million, whatever you want to spend on, it's a lot of money. It's relative to the money you have. So I just want to be sure that even though tech is increasing, Gary Keller tells us that we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and it's the tech revolution. Things are changing. The good news is that Keller Williams is in the forefront of the tech revolution for real estate, and it's at the end $70 billion on tech for real estate, because we believe that people buy from people and they want to be supported by tech. It will make your life more efficient as you look for properties. It'll give you more instant knowledge. Properties will come to you instead of you going to them, meaning, hey, I see you like white kitchens and a fenced backyard and a pool. Like, whoop, here are these houses that fit your needs. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that tech is there and that we are in this tech revolution, but that people are still the fundamental foundation of the real estate industry. It is one of the things, one of my other mentors, Mike Brody, he told me that you always have to be ready for the tap on the shoulder. I was like, the tap on the shoulder? He's like, yeah, you never know when it's going to be, but you need to be ready for it. And the way you get ready for the tap on the shoulder is to have great interaction and communication with a whole variety of people in a variety of places, and be sure you understand what opportunities are actually out there. And if something seems exciting or interesting, find somebody who does it. Ask to shadow them, ask them to sit down. Hey, can I sit down for a half hour and just ask you questions? Then you need to ask them, who do you know that I should know that also knows about this, so you can meet them and continue to learn. And by putting that energy out and those feelers and those questions, it starts to prepare you. Like when I wanted to be the operating principal of the Market Center, I was like, what's it take? So I interviewed all kinds of people, I went to different events, I took certain classes, and then when they came to me, I got the tap on the shoulder. You want to be OP? And I was like, yes. And they said, well, here's a list of what you need to do. And I was like, oh, check, 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 check. I've done it all. I'm like, what? I said, yeah, I was ready for the tap on the shoulder because I knew what I was looking for. And I think business is everywhere, relationships are everywhere. I'm a huge advocate of when you fly, that you get dressed up. That's something my mother, she's like, no sweatpants and jeans and whatnot in the airport. You never know who you're going to be sitting next to. I actually got my first job in Grand Rapids with Nancy Skinner because I met a guy on a plane. I was dressed in a suit, and so was he. We had a business conversation. He said, you need to meet with Nancy Skinner. And I said, I'd love to. I've already sent her a letter, and I got a rejection letter back. He's like, here's my card. You call her. You tell her that I said you have to meet her. I was like, okay. So I did, and I said, Bob said I have to meet you. And she said, well, if he says that, then I need to meet you. I went in the next day. I was there for 2.5 hours interviewing with all kinds of people, and I was hired by the end of the week. I wouldn't have had that job had I not met the person on the plane and I'd not had the conversation and I didn't look or act professional. Right? So there are these opportunities, they're everywhere. And being really alert about it is huge. That awareness is and just being intentional. Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Jordan. Any other questions before I think it's our time, but I want to be sure. Yeah?
Thank you for a really engaging, warm conversation with us. The question I have is, let's say success in life is somewhat like a chess game. Benjamin Franklin actually made this analogy. And he thought the most successful people in life were those, and not in a competitive sense necessarily, but who could see 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. Mm-hmm. And where does that come from? Is that just innate? Is it practiced? How important is it to you?
Yeah, it's very important to me. I think a lot of it is innate. The practice piece comes back to who you hang around, right? So if the people you're with are having conversations about what their plans are in a year and 5 years, then that starts your conversation. And some of the classes we teach, and you start asking people, okay, so what does your life look like? What's most important? And sometimes what they say, I mean, obviously it's very important to them, but it feels very small. I'm like, okay, I mean, that's great, but is there more? And then after a couple of other people go and they talk about bigger things, then all of a sudden somebody's like, actually, I like that sounds pretty good. So it's expanding the mind. So I think some of it can be learned, but I do feel like inherently some people are risk takers, some people have a more clear vision, and some people really make the effort to surround themselves with others that can enhance it. Right? You've heard, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So you've got to find a room where there are smarter people, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of smart people everywhere. I also feel like it's important to know that I don't believe, I think when you find a good person with great values and ethics and integrity and transparency, that you can teach them anything, any skill, anything. But you can't teach people how to be great people, right? If you're a jerk, you're a jerk, you're a jerk. You just are, you know those people. Like, I can't train jerk out of you, but I can train all this other stuff into you. So I think it's important to know what type of person you're attracting, and that's a look in the mirror. So finding those people who are willing to explore with you and be vulnerable and share their dreams that are so big that you're going to laugh at them, those are the people I like to hang around with.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
You'll indulge me. Okay, say you were to go to the university of your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's Harvard, maybe it's Michigan, maybe it's, wherever. What course would you take if you had utter freedom?
If I had utter freedom to take any course, honestly, I'd still go back to the communications-related courses. Once I found those, and I found it by accident, right? I was a freshman, and they're like, well, you need to take something in this category, and this category, and this category. I loved those classes. I felt like communication classes and teaching people how to be good listeners and to be able to stand up in front of people and present, and that skill set has been the common thread with every one of my businesses. With the exception, I did have a cemetery mowing business for a while, and nobody talked. I used to say, nobody complains, not one complaint. But that's the only business I had where people weren't talking. And otherwise, it was all about relationships. So I think just a really strong, it's true. It was a really great business. Seriously. At any rate, so yeah, I think anything related to communication, I'm sure basic business courses are a good idea as well, but I found much more enjoyment in the communications ones. Yeah? All right, well, hopefully you'll join me outside and we can mingle and talk. You can ask some more questions. Thank you very much.